how many people are familiar with Krishnamurti at all? You are.
No, but not before.
Well, as it said in the biographical background, he was born in South India in 1895. His parents were Brahmins. His father worked for the Theosophical Society there. And he was discovered on the beach by C.W. Ledbetter, who was one of the big people in Theosophy, one of the leaders, along with Annie Besant, was a British woman. Ledbetter was Australian. The Theosophists were started by this woman named Madame Blavatsky, who's kind of a mysterious Russian person who I guess was involved with the occult, among other things. The Theosophists had the goal of kind of uniting all of the world religions, and they had a lot of Hinduism was involved, spiritualism, and they at a time had tens of thousands of members. They were very big. The campus of Point Loma University was their center here in San Diego. Yeah. And
what's now Point Loma? What's your name?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the Theosophical Society is still active in Chicago.
Yeah, they're still around.
And
And when I was just out of high school, I knew a girl whose parents were involved in Theosophy, and she sort of introduced me to Hinduism. And I remember they had some books they were still publishing. They had published 3 volumes, Krishnamurti's commentaries on living, even in the 1950s, after he had disavowed them, decades earlier.
Christine, can you hear all right? Is it loud enough? Okay, good.
So he was discovered, and then he was thought to be the incarnation of this Lord Maitreya, the world teacher. And then when his parents died, they undertook his education, sent he and his brother to England for education. And then over the course of the years, he just had some spiritual experiences which led him to believe that he wasn't really a good teacher, that the whole thing was God, and that truth was a pathless land, and there was no way to get to it by following us. And for the rest of his life, he traveled the world. He gave lectures, basically. So that was it. And then he met and influenced a lot of people, including George Bernard Shaw, David Bohm. David Bohm was a friend of his. David Bohm was probably one of the great physicists of the 20th century. Bohm himself had been blackballed. He was Einstein's protege at Princeton, and then because of his political activities, he was kind of blackballed and had to leave the United States and taught various places. But he wound up doing pretty well in England as an academic. And then later on, he and Krishnamurti would have they had recordings of their discussions, and they would discuss these topics. Other people were Aldous Huxley, who was a neighbor Krishnamurti's in Ojai. And they were pretty close. Alan Watts, Henry Miller, Bruce Lee, Jackson Pollock, and Eckhart Tolle. There's a couple of people that I read who had philosophies very similar, but I think they just developed on their own. One was the American yoga teacher Joel Kramer, who wrote a book called The Passionate Mind, and the other one was a woman named Vimala Thakar, who was a British Indian civil servant, and she used to go around and give lectures, talks. And I saw her once in Berkeley. I saw Krishnamurti twice. And once in the early 70s, he was at the big auditorium in Santa Monica. And I drove down from Santa Barbara to hear him speak. And this is a kind of a height of his notoriety, because what happened is all the gurus have been coming over in the 60s and 70s, and there's a lot of interest in Eastern thought, even though what he was teaching didn't really have anything to do with Eastern thought.
Who was this that you heard?
Krishnamurti.
Oh, okay.
And there was like 5,000 people there. It was huge. And I remember that I don't remember much about it, except that there's always a question and answer period, and he goes through the same about his usual thing, like you shouldn't be following people. And then someone gets up and says, "I'm a teacher of transcendental meditation," and it's like, haven't you been listening to anything he said? And he kind of ran off the stage because the questions were just not. People were looking for a guru. They weren't looking for inquiry, which is what he was all about. And then I saw him again in the Ojai area at Maynard's Oaks about 1976. And I remember people there who were following the gurus. The very first thing he said in that talk was, "I am not your guru." But people just, people didn't want to listen, I guess. The thing is that under the definition of guru is someone who points the way, or someone who points, which is really what it was. But a guru came to be someone who was a leader that was a discipline, and they have traditions and groups. The traditions of the swans, various kinds. Some of them were more legitimate than others. So I was at one time, I was pretty much involved with his teachings and read him a lot. And there weren't any videos, although I did see talks that they used to have on KPBS back in probably maybe late 60s, early 70s. And there are many videos that you can watch now. They're all on YouTube. And I had the idea maybe we would watch one or two just to get the idea of this, if the technology is available here.
Yeah, let's see if we have time.
Okay.
Technology should be available. I assume it's just online.
Yeah, they're just, you just go, just do a search for Krishnamurti and go to videos, and there's a whole one. I've watched a couple of them, which might be okay. They kind of encapsulate from different angles what he was all about. So the essence of this philosophy is that truth cannot be reached through thinking or the accumulation of knowledge. He rejected all philosophies and religions as a means to finding truth. The thinking mind has to stop before one can see what really is. He often used the phrase, "the observer is the observed," which means that our idea about anything we see distorts the critical perception of it. He also taught that we can't really understand ourselves through thought or analysis, that understanding only comes through perceiving ourselves in relationship. So, yeah, I don't know how we want to go about this. I mean, I could just read some of these quotes and we can talk about what we think about them.
Well, maybe with one of the, I've a couple of things that I pulled out that sort of intrigued me about the essence of his philosophy, but I wondered, what do you feel are the essence of his philosophy?
Well, that's basically it, and one of the things he said is that consciousness is its content. And that so if you're approaching a problem from consciousness, that it will always be distorted by what's already there. And not only is consciousness its content, but consciousness, your consciousness also involves the consciousness of the whole world. So everything that everybody believes that, and that you have come in contact with through your life is in your consciousness.
Right.
And the idea of expanding consciousness just still has it within its container. So in order to actually perceive reality as it is you have to go beyond or outside of consciousness.
So I think what I saw that related to that was he really contrasts the physical world from what he calls the symbolic world, which is your consciousness.
Yeah.
And so if a tree is in the physical world, that's a tree and that's reality. But as soon as you name it, you call it a tree, you describe it in your mind, and you sort of bring it into your consciousness. It's no longer a tree. I mean, it's whatever you think it is. And that
it's all your past perceptions, trees.
right.
And so it's very difficult to see whatever it is there. And
yeah, I mean, where does the truth end and where do you
start?
Yeah. And then the other thing is about truth, where he says, the only way to find truth is to find it in yourself. And if you find truth and you tell it to somebody, yeah, you can tell it, and they'll, they can listen and just decide what they want to do. But as soon as they repeat your truth to somebody else, it's not a truth anymore.
Not only that, but if you're talking about your truth or describing it, whoever you're communicating with is going to interpret it according to whatever they have.
Exactly, and that's why they can't repeat it somewhere else, because it's like the old telephone thing.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to describe it.
And so his talks are kind of a way of going in step by step, a kind of inquiry
Right.
into these various topics, fear.
Right. And he also takes that to sacred texts are not truth. They're all bogus.
Yeah.
Because they're all, obviously, they're just repeating truths.
Right.
Which have this whole issue around it. So I don't know where to take that in my life, but I found it intriguing.
Well, I kind of think that if you have a spiritual path, you follow whatever it is, using Christianity, and that he has a way of keeping you honest, which is to keep from believing just because someone else says so, but instead to examine it, in your own self to see.
Yeah. I got the book, The First and Last Freedom, from Amazon, which is $1.99 midtown.
Yeah.
Along with another one of his books, but there's a quote from it that relates to this. It says, "To understand the misery and confusion that exists within ourselves and so in the world, we must first find clarity within ourselves, and that clarity comes about through right thinking. This clarity is not to be organized, for it cannot be exchanged with another. Organized group thought is merely repetitive. And so with that sort of sweeping thing, he throws away all religions, all organizations, all sacred texts, etc.
Had you given thought to, say, the Enlightenment that Buddha supposedly?
Well, I was actually just seeing a video, I watched a video this morning when he talks about enlightenment, and I think what he said was that enlightenment is not an experience, because as soon as it's an experience, again, there's this distance between, because an experience requires an experience. And so there again, you have the internal and the external, or the experience becomes the goal you're after. Whereas enlightenment is something that it just kind of it appears kind of like a revelation. It's not something that can be pursued in a way.
I didn't have the sense that he's really into a lot of meditation. I'm not sure, but was that a big part of his?
Well, no, he actually talks about meditation too, and he says that using techniques doesn't get to the essence of meditation. And he also talks about, the idea of using mantras. And he says, well, they can quiet the mind in a mechanical way, but they're not really getting to the essence of what meditation is.
Here's one quote that I like, which has a lot to do, I think, with the current political climate, which says, "A lie can be extended, propounded, and repeated, but not truth. When you repeat truth, it ceases to be truth, and therefore sacred books are unimportant."
And so his idea about meditation is that meditation is the cessation of thought and the cessation of the me. When the me disappears, then meditation happens. And I can see where that's one of the goals of Buddhist meditation, I think, is to be at the point where there's no longer a meditator, there's just meditation.
If you look at what the goal might be of being absorbed into the universe, shall we say, or whatever comprises the universe, and you're simply, I don't know how to describe that, but simply a part of it.
Yeah.
And the tree example is it's the part in everything that you see. To me, that was sort of a end goal. And not many people are able to achieve that. And I guess I was thinking that in terms of enlightenment that a Buddha might be able to achieve. You're simply a oneness with the cosmos. And I didn't know if this was a part of his stuff, because he didn't talk about meditation in there, or at least isn't what I read there.
Yeah. There's lots and lots of quotes, and I had to spare down a couple of pages.
Yeah, sure.
Ron, what do you think?
I think Krishnamurti is actually fairly naive. What he's getting at, I absolutely agree, and I've directly experienced it myself in Zazen, sitting in Zen meditation. At its core, Zen Buddhism teaches us that the apartness, the separateness of the created person, the created entity, and the created experience is an illusion. It is all one. It is all one. And when you sit in meditation under the Zen tradition, you're not attempting to get anywhere. You're not attempting to gain anything. In fact, Suzuki teaches that if you think you're becoming good at meditation, that's a gaining thought. and it's an illusion. And I think Krishnamurti gets to it. The problem is he rejects the truthiness, the truth of the moment at which you begin reporting the experience, you are corrupting the experience. You are representing something other than the experience itself. And he writes in his October 24 diaries, without going on too far, he says, waking, it was there with clarity and precision. The otherness was there, and waking up was necessary, not sleep. It was deliberate to be aware of what was happening, to be aware with full consciousness of what was taking place. He goes on to talk about being asleep versus being fully awake. And when you're fully awake, this strange and unknowable otherness was a palpable reality, a fact, and not an illusion. Later on, he says, again, these words have certain significance, definite and communicable, but these words lose all their meaning when the otherness has to be conveyed in words. Words are symbols, but no symbol can ever convey the reality. It was there with such incorruptible strength that nothing could destroy it, for it was unapproachable. You're unapproachable because you and your whole essence is part of it. When you attempt to approach to that experience, you now are operating in the Zen Buddhist illusion that you are not a part of the whole. Because if you're part of the whole and integral with the whole, you can't approach anything. Right, precisely. It's something that in my life I have called ineffability. And when I've had these experiences, and once in a while, I'm fortunate enough to really, when I'm sitting in meditation, just with an empty mind, just observing my mind as I'm going moment by moment in that experience. The moment I try to describe it, I find that the words themselves separate me from the experience. That's what I call ineffability. It's something that it just is. And I can't walk around it and look at it and describe it to you.
Right. You started out saying that,
But
which I think is right, that Krishnamurti is doing this, whatever it is he's doing in his mind to search for the truth.
Yeah.
But you said that basically Buddha would say that was also an illusion.
it's a gaining idea.
Yeah, it's a gaining idea.
It's a gaining idea. You're attempting to gain something from your meditation.
Robin, is that up on the Buddhist side? What's your?
Well, they're different flavors.
Very different traditions, but it's not particularly different. I studied more from a Tibetan
Mhm.
tradition, but it's very similar. You're only not trying to gain anything.
Not trying to
There'll
get
be times when students will say, you know, I had this wonderful experience when I was meditating. I just felt like I was full of light and I was so happy. And the teacher would say, that's okay, don't worry, that will pass.
Yeah, Pema Chodron says her teacher, she came to him full of excitement from an experience she had in her meditation. And she really felt like she had come to a breakthrough. And I'm blocking on his name. Her teacher said,
Chogyam Trungpa.
thank you. No big deal. It's no big deal.
It's a Donald Trump.
No, he's Donald Trump stole it, but he had a different meaning. No big deal. That you want to cultivate in your meditation.
Sure, that,
A mindset of no big deal.
I think,
nothing to be remarked about.
I think Krishnamurti would say that, you know, if you're meditating for a result,
Right,
you know, that's not real meditation.
yeah, and that's,
And if you have some kind of experience, she says, when you have an experience that's already in the past. And then the other trap is, okay, you had this experience in meditation, and then you start comparing it to your other meditation experiences. So you go down that rabbit hole.
yeah, and so that's actually kind of a dilemma that, well, I experienced in reading Krishnamurti. If you're reporting in your diaries, right,
Yeah.
then you're unable to share your authentic experience, which you say is pathlessness and placelessness. Because the way that he constructs it, none of that has reality. It's all illusion. If you must describe it, then it's illusion. And that's one of the contradictions I've always had with Zen meditation. But I do have a gaining idea. It helps me center and tame my jungle brain. Right. So from that perspective, and from Krishnamurti, and from Shunri Suzuki, I've already lost the game, but I'm okay with that. Okay, because I had those moments in my meditation, where the veil of apartness fell away for that brief, timeless moment. Right? This is interesting about the Krishnamurti's collaboration with David Bohm too, because they actually were, one was a theoretical physicist who rejected the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics, David Bohm, and Krishnamurti, who from a completely different perspective rejected the apartness of the awake reality that you were immersed in. Fascinating to me. I don't have a conclusion.
A question for me is, how seriously do we take, or did he take his idea of organizations as being useless? I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not the word, but.
You know, I don't know, because I don't think he was trying to, what he was trying to do was to get people to stop following something, as if that was the truth, or was going to lead them to the truth.
Right,
That,
okay, so it wasn't necessarily getting rid of religion, but just don't take it too seriously.
yeah,
It's all symbols.
you know, it wasn't for him, that's for sure. Although there was an organization, Krishnamurti, you know,
Yeah.
but that was more of a practical thing, that, you know, organize his tours, and you know, having places to put him up when he was.
Well, I'm thinking organizations like churches and governments
Yeah, well,
and
there's
societies, does he
Yeah.
want us all to be wandering around?
Well, the
With no
foundation is still there.
Pardon?
The foundation is.
Oh, yeah, it's still there.
Krishnamurti.
They're still disseminating these books.
Yeah,
You know,
so there's a book I want to read, which is an uncommon collaboration, which is a transcription of David Bohm and Krishnamurti's dialogues and discussions together.
I have one of those books, I bought a long time ago, Truth and Actuality, where they do, and it's interesting because it's almost like Bohm is leading the discussion, and Krishnamurti is really quite.
So David Bohm, not to take away from the topic, but David Bohm is fascinating. He worked under Oppenheimer during the Manhattan Project. And while Oppenheimer went forward and accepted, but publicly said he did not believe that the quantum physics he had constructed was the final underlying structure of the universe. He's a practical man. David Bohm rejected it, and he believed there is a deeper level of reality, which he wrote in the last book he wrote, is wholeness and the implicate order.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the idea there is that reality is n-dimensional, and it's enfolded and folded together. Some of the dimensions are hidden, they're implicate. There are explicate dimensions and implicate dimensions. Quantum physics is observing the explicate, the visible, the observable dimensions, but there's a deeper reality, which is the wholeness. And that was fascinating to Einstein, and actually he had the office right next to Einstein at the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton. And they took walks together and debated these issues, because Einstein as well rejected the ground truth of quantum physics, even though it was his work which triggered the recognition that there were these quantum phenomena, structure of the universe.
The only thing you could use it for is to predict the results of an experiment, and if it came true,
Well,
it had some element of reality to it, but
and then there's still
that's the whole math, a lot of mathematics, to me, is gravity and all these mathematical proofs are just not, they're again symbols and not really the reality.
right. It's hard to make it accessible too.
Yeah.
I read a book once called Blackfeet Physics,
Uh-huh.
and it was written by a physicist who went and hung out with the Blackfeet Indians, and a lot of their physics has to do with the implicate order.
Well, that's a way of thinking about that, certainly.
Yeah,
So-
the Mitchell books back from the '60s.
So it's interesting.
The Tao of physics.
Right, exactly. It is a dancing woolly master.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's still a lot of that going on today. There's a very vigorous debate between theoretical physicists who still believe there is an underlying ground truth, and those who are theoretical physicists who are willing to follow the scientific method, and that dictates of all the possible explanations. The most defensible and most logical one is the simplest. It's called Occam's razor. Yeah, you choose which, you lived it is your career, but so that's still very much alive and active. What I'm really intrigued by is what people's thoughts are about this conundrum of the unteachability of Krishnamurti's writings as a way of thinking about or experiencing our reality here on where we are, whether it's an illusion or not, it's our ground truth. And there's one more thing I'd like to throw in. So in AI,
What do you mean by unteachability?
well, if you're teaching it, you're a teacher, and if you're a teacher, you're using symbols and simile and allegory and explanation. And as I understand Krishnamurti, that in and of itself is already removed from the ineffable, what I call the ineffable experience.
Right.
Well, he's not teaching in the normal way where you list a bunch of facts and.
I don't care what he uses as the verb or the noun. I mean, that's either that or he's just there so he can get a
Are you
paycheck.
saying showing the way isn't?
Well, what he's doing is doing kind of an active inquiry. And that people, you can't really say, okay, this is what it is. We have to somehow, use symbolic language to get at it, and maybe there's some kind of leap. It's just like where you have a metaphor, and the metaphor sparks you to make a leap of understanding. But it's not a direct, It's not like, 2 + 2 =
It's
4.
not like teaching facts.
Pardon me?
It's not like teaching facts.
No, it's another kind of,
So would you be okay if I said he's inviting you into a personal inquiry?
right,
Would you be okay with that?
yeah.
Sounds like teaching to me.
Well,
Hey, wait a minute.
it actually might be help
Maybe when we see the video, we'll
to see a video and
see
see
what
what
he
he's
does.
getting at, I mean, he does, he has opinions, he makes, because how can you not, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to use symbols,
Yeah,
even though he says that isn't.
he's like one
There's
time he
something I
said
don't
about,
understand.
using mantras and meditation, he said, well, any word will work. You can say Coca-Cola will work just as well as anything else, because it mechanically quiets the mind, and if that's what you want to do, well, then it
Yeah.
does that. But that's not what meditation is, because meditation is the ending of the me.
Roman, your thoughts on this whole grand thing that you can share with us? Not to put you on the spot.
Help me out. Help me out there.
Not really, this is all, I have trouble resonating with exactly, I'm reading the quotes. He sounds kind of like a free-floating mystic. I mean, all of the religions have their mystic traditions where the idea is, in Christianity, you have a direct experience of God, that has nothing to do with, how someone taught Genesis or whatever.
Right,
But, the religions, it happens within a framework. I mean, there are structures that kind of help point you in the right direction. It's not the only way to approach the infinite, but it's one way that works. I'm reading a book right now called The Universal Christ by Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan monk, and has a very universalist Christian perspective. And he says things very much like this, but it's embedded in a tradition that kind of helps you along the way. And if there's no such thing as teaching, if there's no such thing as organization, then I personally have a hard time kind of seeing how you get to
Right.
where Krishnamurti got to. It's like, well, okay, I did it, you're all on your own. And, the other Buddhism, Christianity, the other religions are kind of like, well, we'll take you wherever you are and, give you a path in that direction.
Except I think, maybe one of the reasons that he rejected all religions is that, all these religions have all this other baggage that you can just get completely sidetracked by.
I can't.
And also they have a bunch of different functions depending on each person and what they think their needs are, or they feel like their needs are, comfort.
See, this is what I like about the Buddhist and Hindu idea of reincarnation. It's like, you don't have to do it all in this lifetime.
Right.
Maybe for a lot of people, basic Christianity or basic Islam or whatever, meets them where they are, at least gets them to opening their heart to, loving your neighbor and all. And maybe that's a good step for one lifetime.
So Robin, I'd be interested if you could tell us your thoughts, if you compare and contrast Krishnamurti's teachings, non-teachings, to the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. Is there any intersectionality?
Things I do not understand Krishnamurti well enough to say that.
Okay.
From what you're saying, it kind of sounds like no, because, the Four Noble Truths are, they're kind of like concepts.
Yeah.
And then when you go on to the Eightfold Path, well, that's a path that I don't think he would go there.
See, I'm a big fan of paths because I know we're near Krishnamurti, so I need a path personally. I think there's all these ways of dividing the world up into different kinds of people. And one of my favorite ways to do it, I mean, besides dividing the world into people who divide the world into two kinds of people and people who don't.
There are two kinds of people.
If you're gonna do it, I tend to divide the world into like scientists and engineers.
Okay,
Scientists, like Krishnamurti, want to know the real truth. The truth behind, what we see. Engineers just want to make something work.
right. So I'd use a different dichotomy. I'd use, people who tend towards logic and people who tend towards metaphor. It's kind of two sides of the brain.
I mean, we all have our ways to do it. See, I was an engineer, so
Yeah.
this comes naturally to me. I'm just trying to find a path that makes me, helps me live my life better. And for me, Krishnamurti seemed like a step too far.
Well, I think the thing about Krishnamurti, it's useful at all, is it kind of, his approach kind of keeps you more on the straight and narrow, and so you don't go off into these different tangents of belief that, if I just do this, then this will happen, that kind of reward. No, get back and, get back to the thing that we're pointing towards.
Well, that's why I read the Christian mystics, because
Yeah.
they're less prone to that.
Exactly, yeah.
So your question, Ron, about comparing it to Hinduism.
Or
Actually,
Buddhism.
Buddhism, I actually wrote in the little blurb I sent out to everybody that reminded me in some ways of transcendentalism, Hinduism and Buddhism. So I asked ChatGPT to actually compare and contrast on each of those axes, Krishnamurti with that. So I'll read you just, not the whole big thing, but wait, I don't have a list of conclusion. Shoot. Well, Krishnamurti and Buddhist philosophy share several overlapping ideas, particularly concerning self-awareness, the nature of suffering, and the rejection of authority in spiritual matters. However, there is also significant differences in their approaches to meditation, the concept of the self, and liberation. And then there's all these things, the nature of self, and there's a huge thing, and there's suffering, it's a huge thing, and then meditation and mindfulness is a huge discussion, but there's a lot of overlap, but apparently ChatGPT thinks there's some essential differences.
There's a thing in the AI community right now. And they have a phrase they use all the time, and they're statisticians mostly. They talk about ground truth versus AI produced conjectures, as if ground truth is something that's knowable. And my wife has, she's a mathematician by training, on the academic side, rather. She says a fact is something which is generally assumed to be true by a consensus. That's a fact. And a truth is something that can be independently demonstrated over and over and over again by different people not communicating with each other, but arriving at the same phenomenon. Of course, her brain was polluted by Jesuits when she was an undergraduate.
I have to
She
see
went-
that written out.
she went to
see
Loyola.
that.
Oh, there's a huge difference.
There is.
Yeah, there is a huge difference what a fact is. A fact is effectively a restatement of scientific method. I mean, a truth.
That everybody accepts.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
The truth is.
science is a consensus activity.
Right.
Right. Facts are things that every time, maybe I got it backwards, truth and facts, but the point is, different people not communicating.
That's my point. That's a great one.
Sorry, she's more rigorous than I am.
It's sort of like
She
saying,
studied pure mathematics
I heard
in
it
English
was
in
a good
Chicago, right? That's where her doctorate is.
I listened to a debate the other day, and Is Truth lying, or is he, or sorry, is Trump lying, or is he just bullshit?
Oh, no, I've
Well,
heard
well,
that, I've heard that distinction made.
Yeah, I could make this distinction.
Because
Myself,
lying is when you expect the other person to take what you're saying as truth, even though it isn't.
oh,
And bullshitting is when you kind of all know it isn't true, but you're accepting it because it's
You're
your,
just throwing stuff out.
it's
there.
your line.
yeah, I see it slightly different, you're bullshitting to bring yourself up in stature. I did this, I did that, you know, this is a big deal,
Oh, there's a motive.
whereas,
It's
yeah,
a self-gain.
whereas lying is just. I don't know, Asian immigrants are eating
Dogs.
cats and
And dog
dogs,
cats. Yeah.
it's just like. He doesn't gain anything by saying that, I mean.
Oh, yes, he
personally.
does.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Well, maybe an election, but not like,
If you're-
This is a pretty big deal, right?
but not his ego, I mean, not
It's
his.
shutting off people's cognitive part of their brain and triggering their reptile brain. Anyway,
Or something
Yeah.
along those lines. Anyway, speaking of which, one of the things Krishnamurti goes into over and over again is this idea that how we're all conditioned, and that in order to see what actually is, you have to understand how you're conditioned. And the way you do that is to see yourself in a relationship. So, and then your reactions. I think there's a conditioning quote in there.
Christine, get ready for me to call on you in a bit.
yeah. Be interesting to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, thank you for asking. I'm just, this is a very intellectual discussion. I'm just struggling to stay afloat. But I'm catching little bits of really great information, and opinion here and there. I don't really have an opinion. I found the small amount of information that was provided on Krishnamurti to be totally incomprehensible. So
I mean, BS too, right?
well,
Yeah.
I guess I don't understand his writings well enough, but I just I just go, huh? But anyway, I think the discussion has been great. We've wandered all over the place, so I'm just happy to listen.
Yes, I have the same thing with a lot of quotes from him and other people in sort of that realm of Buddhism and Hinduism and whatever. I find it hard to get my mind around it.
I get the most powerful idea for me is this concept of what I call ineffability. And by that, I mean in some very specific experiences. But I have an experience, I can't explain it, and if I try to explain it, it loses its saliency for me that it had in the moment that it happened. Because my Western brain wants to explain and develop a hypothesis or a theory about what's really going on, rather than just accepting this as a gift. The universe gave me a gift, and it's not my job to explain or defend the reality. The reality was the reality in the moment that it occurred.
It's like trying to explain a dream that was very emotional for you and try to explain it to someone else and have them get it.
Yeah. And there's very specific things, and then I think it's actually why I married my wife Sylvia. We have had shared experiences in our entire 30-year marriage, but even before, when we were dating, when a smell would arise,
Oh, what?
a smell, in a space we were both in simultaneously. And it was incredibly emotionally comforting. When it first happened, she very timidly asked me, because I said, "Did you spray something?" And she very timidly asked me, she said, "Do you smell it too?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Thank God, I'm not crazy. This has been happening to me my whole life." Right? And since then, almost every year, at significant dates in one of our lives or jointly in our lives, an event happened, mostly around someone passing on or a family holiday. The closest I can, there I'm gonna go, I'm gonna define, I'm gonna analyze it. It's gonna make it go away. It's like a presence just came and brought us an emotional gift.
I was gonna try and set up a video, guys can keep talking.
And I know that sounds crazy. And I don't have a history of epilepsy because, you know, in epilepsy you get nervous. And I've never heard of having a joint aura. So that's where my experience of ineffability really comes from. And when I read Krishnamurti the first time that I actually started to reading it deeply, I said, "Oh, I get that." As soon as I start to try and describe, explain, and share an experience, a waking experience, then it loses its power. Now it's no longer genuine because, as Krishnamurti says, I have to use symbols and representations. So that's all I got to say about that.
But you and your wife would use similar symbols or representations to describe.
If we described it, but if it's like the first time it happened, and she said, "Did you experience that too?"
What is
Yeah.
that? Well, it has to be-
Whatever happened, right? So that's that moment of reality, but you're probably right. And so I've always had this. Well, growing up, I had these experiences, but that's a whole different topic. But it's something that I came to call ineffability. I can't describe it. And if I did, then I might destroy it. Which is what led me originally to sitting in Zazen.
I just haven't used the list. Oh.
Are you looking for the video?
Yeah,
Just click on the Christian. Oh, there's no video. Oh, I see.
these
Well, there's
are,
a,
these are all the videos on YouTube.
Okay.
okay,
I'm gonna have to look up quick and see if they show.
grab one. All right. Oops, what's that on the left? Courage to stand.
I think you did that search in Google instead of YouTube.
Oh,
Can you go back?
what are these? I think these are.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Just
Go back, you're right.
have to find one that's not too long, you know.
I have an ad blocker. I'm not used to saying ads on properties.
There's still might be Google, but Google can.
No, it's.
So you know ones. The ones
Yeah.
that look familiar.
Yeah, it's gotta be something that's not too long, you know.
You haven't picked one up, right?
Keep going.
How long was the fact we are nothing?
All right.
I'm just reading to myself.
Was it like?
14 minutes, you could do that.
Oh, that wouldn't be bad.
Okay.
Yeah, let's try that. I don't know if I saw that one, but it might be interesting.
Oh, there's one called Remaining in Now.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, no, sure, now we need to, share our screen and.
Yeah.
You go to Zoom, you can share it.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Okay. So now I get to patch together.
Is the Zoom there?
Sure. Sure.
and choose that video. That's the black one. That's it. Yeah,
And then play. Whoops.
Nothing.
I
oh, there you
I
go.
went to the end.
That's not the same one,
Is it?
no,
Oh,
the one we want is 15 minutes. So it's another. To go back.
I'll do that.
Alt tab, alt left cursor.
I'd like to do it just in the mirror, but maybe I can't.
Well,
Yeah, you're in YouTube.
yeah, but you don't have that, go back.
Okay, I'll stop.
Try this.
Okay, stop it there.
Just try this.
Good.
Oh, no, I don't have YouTube.
Okay, control what's the windows,
Alt tab.
yeah. There, I think that. Okay, now let me,
Utilities. Useless. Oh, I was trying to go back.
I know, it used to be on my computer, it's a little arrow back there.
I think that was the one.
Let's see. So I have to find it again, yes.
Scroll down. Oops.
Okay, we're getting close.
What is it?
There we go.
Okay, so now. Pause it. Okay, so what's the control?
Alt tab. Yeah. We're still sharing, so,
No, I closed it.
oh. There. Share that. Share, quick share.
Okay. And now hit this one instead of.
Let's see what we can get.
Yes.
Yes.
What?
We're finally
The audio.
figuring out what it is.
I'm gonna see.
There we go.
What is enlightenment? Again, is one of those words that have come from India to be enlightened. To be enlightened about what? I want, please let's be rational, not irrational. What, when I say enlightened, I'm enlightened about what? Say, for instance, I'm enlightened about my relationship with another. That is, I've understood my relationship with another is based on my image about the other, how intimate that image has been put together through many years, that constant reaction, indifference, comfort, comfort, the nagging, the all that between man and woman or people like that. So the image is built. And she has built an image about you. So the relationship is between the two images, which is obvious. And that's what we call a relationship. Now, I perceive the truth of it, and I say, I'm enlightened about it. I'm enlightened about violence. I see clearly, without any distortion, with clear eyes, the whole movement of violence. I see how sorrow arises. And the ending of sorrow is an enlightenment. But we don't mean that. Right? We mean something else. I am enlightened. I will tell you about it. Come to me. And you, rather gullible, and say, yes, tell me all about it. So, I don't want to do this. I don't feel interested. See, we must understand, if you're really going to what is enlightenment, illumination, the voice of truth, not my voice, voice of truth. We must go very careful into the question of time. The so-called enlightened people have said, we have come to it through time. Gradually, life after life, if you believe in reincarnation, I come to the point when I'm enlightened about everything. Right? Which is, it's a gradual process of experience, knowledge, a constant movement from the past to the present and future. This cycle. Right? So, if you are interested in it, is enlightenment the ultimate thing? A matter of time. Is it I hope you are bored by this, are you? Is it a gradual process? Which means the process of time, the process of evolution, the gradual becoming that. Beautiful. So one must understand the nature of time, not the chronological time, but the psychological structure which has accepted time. You're following this? That is, I have hoped to ultimately get there. The desire, which is part of hope, ultimately says, I'll get there. And the so-called enlightened people, but they are not. Because the moment they say, I have enlightened, they are not. They're vanished. It's like a man saying, I'm really humble. When a man says that, you know what it is. Humility is not the opposite of vanity. When the vanity ends, the other is. Those people who have said we are enlightened say you must go through step by step. Practice this, do that, don't do this. Become my pupil, I'll tell you what to do, I'll give you an Indian name or Christian name, and so on, so on, so on. And you kind of irrational human being accept this nonsense. So what they ask is that supreme enlightenment. You understand the meaning of that word? A mind that has no comfort, no sense of striving, going, moving, achieving. So we must understand this question of time, which is the constant becoming or not becoming, which is same, right? The becoming and the not becoming. And when that becoming is rooted in the mind, that becoming conditions all your thinking, all your activity, then it is a matter of using time as a means of becoming, achieving. But is there such thing as becoming? You understand? I am violent. I will be non-violent. That is becoming an idea. Right? I am violent, and the non-violence, I project the idea of not being violent. Because, so I create duality, violent and non-violent. And so there's conflict. Then I say I must control myself, I must suppress, I must analyze, I must go to psychologists, I must psychotherapists, and so on, so on, so on. Without creating the opposite, the non-violence. The fact is violence, not non-violence. Right? The fact, the non-violence is non-fact. If you get that once, the truth, that is the non-violent, the concept of non-violence brings about this conflict between the opposites. The non-fact has no value, only the fact, which is non-violent. Now, to observe the whole movement of powers, anger, jealousy, hate, competition, imitation, conformity, and so on and so on. To observe it without any reaction, without any motive. Right? Then, if you do that, then there is the end of violence, which is an immediate perception and action. I wonder if you understand this. Really? Like a people. So, one can see that illumination, this sense of ultimate reality and so on, is not a time. This goes against the whole psychological religious world. The Christians with their souls, with their saviors, with their ultimate, etc., etc. I say, we say, perception is action, not perception, great interval, and then action. In that interval, you create the idea. Right? Are you following this? So, we are pointing out something, which is, can the mind, the brain, the whole human nervous structure, as well as psychological structure, be free of this burden of million years of time. So that you see something clearly and action is invariably immediate. That action will be rational, not irrational. That action can be explained logically, steadily. So we are saying that ultimate thing which is true is not to be achieved through time. It can never be achieved. It is there or it's not there.
Well, that was quite a part.
That was pretty good. I like listening.
And that's, yeah, interesting, fascinating. Simultaneity of everything.
Thoughts? Anyone else?
That was helpful. I liked his example of setting up, you know, seeing that you're acting violently and setting up this ideal of nonviolence and saying, oh, now I have this duality. I have to get from here to there.
And then you start thinking of all the ways you can get away from being violent and being nonviolent, and that may not work at all. Because it's like there's a poet I like, Kabir, who is a 15th century Indian poet, I think. I may do a thing on him somewhere because he's really good. He was born a Muslim, but somehow tricked this Hindu guru into taking him as a student. But anyway, that's another story. But he talked about, you know, you can, and it was translated by Robert Bly, so he kind of changed the wording to make it more modern. He said, you know, you can wear your hair all matted and long and say all these things, and, you know, do all these rituals, but if you still have a loaded gun in your heart, where are you? You know, it's kind of that idea that you can do all these things to try to be nonviolent, but if you still have that core there, you haven't actually seen it for what it is, then it's still going to be there. And
So he didn't quite explain for me how, okay, you're a violent person, so you don't try to work on nonviolence. And somehow you just get there.
what you have to do is actually see clearly
Act.
the actual violence.
Act nonviolent.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about nonviolence.
Trying to get
Start
from,
missing
he
something.
talks about this in a lot of different ways about you know, feeling that you're some way, somehow, and you want to be something else. So you try to get that experience and be that something else instead of understanding who you are at.
So I would say that take anger, which is the more common.
Yeah.
But if I'm angry, I have to practice not being. I mean, I can understand this, you know, getting not angry and sort of working on it and take self-help books and all that, but I can't understand the angry and then I just become not angry.
And I think what he said, and what I've gotten from the Tibetan Buddhism studies, I mean, if you are angry, I mean, first of all, you really are angry. There's no sense in denying it or pretending you're not.
Right.
If you're angry, you really are. That's
Yes.
the truth. But you're angry, I don't know if this is how Krishnamurti would say it, but you're angry because of misperception somewhere. You're angry because something didn't happen the way you thought it should have happened. Or somehow there are reasons why you became angry. And those reasons are basically you misperceiving something.
I think you would say that seeing all the reasons for your anger doesn't necessarily stop the anger. what it is when you see your anger in relationship, like how it manifests stuff. In other words, you notice, really see the anger completely, like a gestalt. And then he says the seeing is doing work.
So you see it as not useful in the end.
Pardon me?
You see it as not useful.
You see it for what it is instead of, it's like, okay, if you're in a situation and you explode in anger
Right.
over something,
Right.
like, your spouse or, something at work or, someone's a jerk and you're driving down the road.
Puts the dishes in the wrong way in the dishwasher.
Yeah, and so, what happens is that, you don't really see that anger as it's happening. Because you're just anger manifesting itself.
Yeah.
And then later, if you look at it, that's too late. Oh, I was angry. I'll try to do better next time.
So for the dishes example, you just have to say, oh, what the hell, who cares? It's meaningless
It's,
anger. OCD guy.
I have a very different interpretation of what he said, but I don't want to belabor it. But you're going to say, Robin.
Oh, and I may have misunderstood, but he's talking about the violence. And then he said, if you look at it, it's competition, it's greed, it's coming from these things.
Yeah.
And I guess I was taking a jump and saying, these things, in my Tibetan Buddhist view, these things are kind of misperceptions in a way. And the Buddhists will say that moments of anger, they're very useful as pointing out, I kind of say, here's where I have, it's on Shimpa, they talk about this emotional energy. There is something that I'm not perceiving
Right, yeah.
entirely correctly, and life keeps pointing it out to me.
So I guess if trying to interpret what he said was that, all these things he listed, if you see them all immediately, then and completely, which I don't know if we can do that. I don't know.
I took those things
Is it
as
possible?
replacing greed. You don't want, or replacing violence, so it isn't just violence, it's greed, it's, it's all of any one of these things has the same thing. I didn't see it as
I see.
the reason for violence, but
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and listen to.
As Krishnamurti would say, we all see these things through our own
Yes.
perceptions.
Through your conditioning.
Through my conditioning, my Buddhist conditioning.
Okay,
Well, so I think the central argument that Krishnamurti is making, and we've heard it from many others, is that the limitation is a limitation, and we'll get to why this matters. We'll use your example of anger. I don't want to bore people. Is that psychologically, neurologically, we are structured as beings in this creation of only being able to see reality sequentially, in moment by moment by moment by moment, when in fact true reality is that everything is equally present. Everything, everywhere, all at once. There was a movie a couple of years ago that used that theme, right? But that time itself is an illusion. Everything is happening instantly. There is no time. Then looking backward, looking forward, and now are exactly the same, all in existence simultaneously. It's the simultaneity of anger and not anger. And it's the limitations of our, take your pick, he used psychological or neurological or brain, our limitation of only being able to perceive things in time. Time itself is an illusion. This is Einstein's argument for spooky action at a distance. If you have two particles which are entangled, let's just say there are two arrows of time, one pointing up, one pointing down. And by contacting them and measuring some element of those two particles, they become entangled instantly and at any distance. So I can take, in this, we demonstrated experimentally, if we put one on a rocket and we put one in the vault, and I send this one 1,000 miles away, they're still entangled. And if I change the direction up or down of this one, instantaneously, the entangled particle switches state as well. It's an argument for spooky entanglement at a distance, spooky action at a distance, which is what Einstein rejected. And effectively what that means experimentally is time itself is an illusion. But we don't have an alternative.
So what about anger?
If I am angry, Krishnamurti, if I am angry and I want to move to non-anger, by my limitations, have to go through a process of time to become non-angry. But that is a limitation of my perception of reality. In reality, having anger and not anger, or violent and non-violent as a goal, it's a limitation of me in my existence in this creation. In the ground's truth, they both exist simultaneously. And it's time that is the illusion. That's what I get.
Also, another great thing I read.
How do you explain that? I don't know. Go ahead.
Another thing is that he says emotions are a human thing. We have emotions. It's when thought comes in that all the emotions get turned into something that's destructive. So anger can be an emotion, but it's what we do that. You know, your conditioning, which is your thinking, says I'm angry and I need to do something with it instead of just be with it.
And David Bohm's argument in wholeness and the implicate order is exactly the same. That time is the illusion. And that's what's implicate, what is not revealed in our psychological or neurological, take your pick, whatever substrate you want for human consciousness and existence, is a limitation of ourselves as an organism or as a created entity.
And I've heard that before, but I've never understood it. I feel like it's just sort of thrown out there and without really making any sense.
Because no one can.
Like a tree is there, it
No one-
grows, and it dies, and time, it is time. Time. You come back one day, the next day, time is not an illusion in that sense. So they mean it in some other metaphysical sense.
No, they mean it in exactly that same sense. Our perceptions are limited such that we can only perceive within time. But the argument is that the ground reality doesn't have the time dimension. Time collapses.
Yeah, but it's all mathematical.
But I think what
It is mathematics.
I don't think it,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense.
But there's, so the fundamental problem is, you can argue two things. One, we are not capable of perceiving except within time. That's what we are.
I think it's different. I think it's we're capable of perceiving time. But he says time doesn't exist. I mean, we perceive time. We perceive trees.
Krishnamurti is talking about is psychological time,
So he would say that's an illusion.
which is the distance between
Two states of.
in other words, you're in a condition and you want to do something about the condition, but it takes steps. And he says that the way you deal with a condition is to see it outside of time. Everything about it all at once as a total perception.
Okay. That I can get. I can,
So my birth and my death don't really have time associated with it.
Yeah, it's outside,
that's what you would say,
in the
but
ground,
not what
in
that's-
the complete reality. In the complete reality, it's all simultaneous, everywhere equally present, right? This is one description of God, that which is everywhere equally present. Go figure,
So Glenn's thing is a little different, which I can jump on board that train a little easier.
I can understand a little better.
Which was, if I can paraphrase it. You go from one state of mind to another, from anger to, you work your way through one state of mind. Well, really don't. It's not time. Just bring it all to the present and deal with it.
there's not an arrow of.
And then the original question that he was answering in the audience is about enlightenment, is enlightenment, or how you get to it, and he says that, for most people, it's a step-by-step process. It's a goal you get to. And then he went into being enlightened about what are you enlightened about, and then beyond that, there's just the idea of being enlightened, and if you say you are, you aren't.
Yeah. So it's enlightened and not enlightened. It's like not very not like you're enlightened and not enlightened.
I am not really an angry person.
I'm not sure what you do with all
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you live your life on?
Yeah, it's difficult to be, because what he's talking about is saying it takes a tremendous amount of energy to follow things in this way and to perceive in this way, and one of the things that blocks this energy is conflict, internal conflict, and we're full of conflict all the time.
that.
And conflict is caused by our condition.
The human condition.
And the conditioning by everything that's happened to us up to this point. So the first thing we do is to recognize your condition. And that is, which is, a really big job. So,
Well, we've had a great discussion this morning. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
just a quote from Kabir, who says, Kabir only knows what he's lived through. If you haven't lived through something, it's not true.
Say that again.
Kabir only talks about what he's lived through. If you haven't lived through something, it's not true.
Okay. Interesting.
That's an interesting thing. I'll look at it.
Thank you, Christine
Thank
and
you.
Norma. See you next time.
Anybody feel illuminated?
I feel
Just so you aren't.
No, I know a lot more about our Krishnamurti than I did. So great topic, it's fascinating. It's interesting that it turns out he was traveling in the same circles as